Hello, everybody. I apologize for the rather crude, techniques used on this video. I'm just sort of recording it sort of off the top of my head and at night in a dark room. So apologize for that. Just go with it. I'm going to say some stuff that's probably going to make a lot of people angry. I don't really care, but I also think that what I'm saying is necessary, not for me, not for older folks like me, but for if you're like a teenager or a 20-year-old, something like that. I believe that what I'm going to say is going to be of some use to you. So that's why I'm saying it. Not because it's something that I can really put into practice, or people who are older like me can put into practice, but something that you might be able to put in practice if you're a teenager or something, or a little bit older, and want something that can help you and prepare for your future life. And excuse me for kind of slouching here, I'm a little tired. Here's the question. Let's say you are somebody in high school, or say you're somebody preparing for college, and you're thinking, should I go to college, take out some exorbitant college loan and go to college? If you're going to be like in a math or science related field, if you're going to be like a scientist or something, and if that's what you really want to do, not what you're doing for money, then I would say go ahead and go to college, do your bachelor's or your master's and whatever else you need to do that work. For the 99% of other people in the world, I would say don't go to college, because you're going to need stuff for the future. You're going to need education for the future that you're not going to have in college or even in high school. For most people who are in high school, probably they ought to be dropping out right now and working on stuff that's going to be of more use to them in their future life. Now, why do I say that? It is very likely over the next 40 years that the temperature of the planet is going to rise 4 degrees Celsius. And 4 degrees Celsius is pretty much the end of civilization as we know it. It means New York is flooded. It means Bangladesh is gone. All sorts of other, not to mention all the ecological damage of other sorts that's happening between now and then. So 40 years from now, you pretty much can rest assured that civilization as we know it isn't going to be here. Not in the way it is now. Is that statement dire or overreacting? No, it's not. It's absolutely realistic and completely unrecognized, which makes it even more stupefying that people don't get it. I mean, unless there's a radical redirect of all of planet Earth civilization, which is not going to happen. 4 degrees Celsius in 40 years is pretty much a certainty. That means no North Pole. The North Pole has completely melted. It means all most or all of the glaciers in Greenland have melted, and of course all the other ways will have fucked up the planet between now and then. So the things you should be learning if you're like in high school or thinking about going to college, which you shouldn't, unless you're if you're going to be a scientist or something, go ahead and do it, because maybe there's remote possibility that I am wrong, and the things you will learn will be of use to you. But pretty much, if you're planning for a life in the economy, you're going to be disappointed when the economy craters, which is going to do fairly shortly. I mean, you're already seeing symptoms of it. I mean, the reason why we have so many failed states in the Middle East is because basically their whole way of life is just cratered, and that's certainly we have contributed to that. But then that's spreading to Europe. Greece is on a track to become virtually a failed state. That's in Europe, and this is a symptom of a spreading disease that's going to affect the entire world, in the upcoming decades. So if you're planning for your role in the economy, bear in mind that the economy may not be there anymore. And so what you need to be learning about is surviving, first aid, how to grow your food, but also what plants you can grow for food if the climate's fucked up. In other words, if the area you're living in becomes more desertified, or wetter for that matter. Schools don't tell you hardly anything about how to live, how to stop bleeding. If your body's bleeding to death, how do you stop that? Doesn't tell you shit about that. It doesn't. Schools, and something I've found out to my detriment over the last few years, don't really teach you why you should be physically fit. Not really. You should be physically fit because if you're not physically fit, you may not survive. Physical fitness, learning physical fitness and practical physical fitness, how physical fitness is going to help you in your life is important. And so things like this are the things you should be learning instead of, the bullshit the schools are going to teach you, which the schools, just like the rest of society, is in denial about this. So they're not going to teach you the things you need to know to survive. It's going to be difficult enough to survive, with the climate change and ecological devastation and people running around angry with guns. That's another thing that schools don't teach you very well, how to use guns, which you may need may need to know. What was I saying? So you should be learning things like this, and also you should be learning more about how the environment works, so you can find things to live on when shit goes to hell. Like, for instance, many of our crops, they aren't going to be doing necessarily very well in this in the world as it's coming up. You need to find ruggeder things to live on if if you wind up having to be out in the boonies, digging a hole in the ground to survive. These are the things that the school ought to be teaching you, but they're not going to. So you need to teach yourself. And in that case, the years that you would spend in college for the average person, and now I'm not talking about people who really want to be scientists or whatever, but for the average person, the years spent in school, the debt you'll be putting on yourself to pay for college or whatever, is totally wasted, because it's education for a world that will no longer exist that way. If you are one of the large proportion of people, people who are not scientists and so forth, engineers and computer scientists or whatever, for the vast majority of people, education will, especially in universities, but even in high school, will not only not help you, but it will waste time that you may need to learn how to live in the world of the future. And that's not a good thing. So if you're like a high school age, the words I would say to you is learn how to survive in the world that's coming up here in the next 30 or 40 years. Once you learn that, also you should pass it on to other people, teach other people how to do it. Learn things like first aid, nutrition, exercise, hunting. Learn about plants. Learn about the medicinal properties of plants. Learn about what plants are going to still be able to provide us with food if the climate's fucked up. There's a beautiful example, purslane, which is a plant that most people consider to be a weed. It is very nutritious, and it is rugged. It will grow, as long as you don't have like very dense soil, it will grow damn near anywhere, and it's nutritious. That is a food that's useful for the world that you guys, if you're like a teenager or a young adult, are going to inherit, because absolutely, certainly, the shit is going to get fucked up in the next 30 years, and if you're not prepared for it, you're going to die. And perhaps more importantly than the fact that you will die, you won't be able to pass your knowledge of how to adapt to this new world to other people. And that's what I am trying to do now, which is try to pass understanding on to the next generation. Because for me, I'll be dead in probably 10, 15 years. But some of you guys will have the opportunity and the time to find out what you're going to need to do, and other people with you are going to need to do to stay alive in this crisis. And again, this is not draconian naysaying or Cassandra-like prophecies of doom. This is pretty much what the science is telling us. That there's going to be 4 degrees of rise in 4 degrees Celsius rise in global temperature in the next 40 years, and that means basically most of our coastal cities are all flooded, and of course there are also plenty of other indications of all the other ways besides just plain climate that we're fucking up the planet, the loss of biodiversity, and so on, poisoning of the oceans, etc. between all that, essentially what we're looking at, and it's sort of time to suck it up and face it, is the end of civilization as we know it. That's not altogether a bad thing. Our civilization has been fucking up the planet pretty well. Maybe it'd be a good time to rethink that. Rethink consumerism. Rethink our greed-oriented way of life. Find a new way of living, which, assuming that we survive the coming decades, will help us to inhabit the Earth in a bit more of a permanent manner, in a way that's not going to create massive dislocation, ecosystem destruction, and so on. So yeah, if you're in high school and you're not planning on being a scientist, drop out. Go out in the woods, learn the names of plants, learn what they do, learn what their physical properties are, learn what their medicinal properties are, learn whether you can grow them, learn whether you can eat them, because you will need to know this very likely in the next 30 or so years, and that's the sort of thing you should be learning. And I'm overweight as well, so I'm certainly pointing the finger at me as well. All the fat people hanging around, you see them in Walmart and stuff, they're going to die when shit comes down. They are not going to be adapted for what the hell's going on, because they're sedentary, they're fat, they are just not adapted for a existence that is not in the cozy bosom of industrial civilization, and so they're going to die. And so some people probably should not be some of those people, and some people should probably learn what it takes to survive in the future. Also, I know that probably a lot of the people who watch my videos are atheists, and that's perfectly fine. You may want to start thinking about a spiritual way of life that isn't focused on human beings, isn't human-centric. Because if you start thinking that the human beings are the only thing that matters in the world or in the universe, then we act in a certain way. And if we think that the earth and the other animals and plants in the world have value too, then we'll act in a different way. And so our thinking is skewed, and we're basically, as humans, selfish sons of bitches, which is natural to us, is natural to all creatures, but other creatures don't know how to destroy the planet. We do. So we probably need to grow up in that respect and start looking after the planet also, or maybe even first. And I'm sorry that if what I'm saying is upsetting people, but you're welcome to my world. I'm having to live with the knowledge of how things actually are, day in and day out, and it sucks. I mean, it sucks to be looking at people just charging headlong like a freight train into ecosystem destruction, into destruction of the planet and the living networks that we need to live on, destruction of other plants, and the extinction of species of plants and animals that we hardly even understand. So if this video pisses you off, welcome to my fucking world. Because I'm having to have my nose in it every single day, and unlike most people who have a powerful ability to deny the actual reality of the fact, I actually don't have that power, and so I'm confronted daily with the truth as it really is, which is that civilization itself is destroying its own means to continue. So again, if you're a teenager or looking towards college, looking to see, if college is right for you, and again, you're not one of that small group of people who are planning for a future as a scientist. Basically, although what kind of life you'll have when there's no economy to support your science, I don't know. But aside from people who really desire a technical way of life, don't bother with going to college. But that doesn't mean don't educate yourself. It means educate yourself more. It means pick up the slack from all the stuff that you haven't been educated about over the last 10, 15 years of your life, but you should have been educated about, but weren't. So when I advocate not going to college, that doesn't mean don't educate yourself. Educate yourself harder, because you're going to need it. You're going to need to know what it's going to take to survive in the future, because it's going to suck. And it's going to suck for probably 100 years or more, maybe hundreds of years. It's going to suck. And so you shouldn't waste time looking for a job and a career in this economy, because this economy is probably isn't going to be around very long. And we're already starting to see that in places like Greece. You know, and you see it from all the time from politicians. Politicians are always talking about, you know, more jobs, more economic opportunity. Well, the basis of which that economic opportunity lies is about to go away. It's going to go away in probably the next 30 years. So, you know, what you should be focusing on is living, surviving. What you need to do to figure out how to survive under adverse conditions. That's what you need to do. Learn about plants, learn about animals, learn about hunting, learn about first aid, learn about you know, agriculture, because those are the things 30 years down the line that you're going to need. And you're not going to need to know, unless again you're going to be a scientist, you know, differential equations and calculus and all that bullshit. Don't waste your time on it. You know, spend your time doing stuff that's going to make you more likely to survive in the future. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. For older guys like me, probably it's you know, it doesn't matter as much. I'm going to be probably dead before shit really comes down hard, although it could start coming down hard as far as economies go in the relatively near future. But if you're young, take advantage of this time. Take advantage of the foreknowledge that you have of the 4 degrees centigrade rise in temperature and the effects that's going to have. Take advantage of this time to learn what you're going to need to learn to survive in this new world. And I'm sorry if this video was a bummer, but you know, wake the fuck up. It's time. It's past time. You don't need to be preparing for a job that's not going to be there. You need to be preparing to survive. Alrighty? Peace.